Meeting is being recorded.
All right. Let's go ahead, Rahul. Rahul, I see a lot of screens. I don't know if you can just show us one screen. I see 3 different screens right now.
Yeah.
This meeting is being
So, are
recorded.
you able to see my screen now?
Yes, we see the Garrett.
Okay. So I'll start with the code. So the code that I have written. So as we know that we get the request parameters uh, from the request handler, and then we parse those parameters and send these parameters to the CDS connector, and then that CDS connector send it to the CDS. So my proposal was to first of all, what we will do is we will prepare the YAML files. So as we can see that for config assign, we have this YAML file, and for config deploy, we have this YAML file. And in these YAML files, we can define the parameters. So and there's a mapper file. What it will do is, as we can see that this is the key from the YAML file, and this is the equivalent parameter inside the execution object. So what we will do is, using the generic Java file, what we will do is we will extract one by one by going through this YAML file, and we will prepare the request object, and this will take action into the consideration. So if I show you this file, so I have defined 4 actions currently. So these action can be added in the future as they add. So assign, deploy, download, and activate. And this action is extracted from the BPMN, and there is scope also I am taking into consideration, and the current scopes are VNF, PNF, and VF. And using the scope and YAML file, I create the URL, and using this URL, I extract the YAML file, and then I map the parameters, and then on the basis of the parameter, I create the JSON. So this is the single file that create the JSON by using mapper as well as the action-scope.yaml. So currently, as you can see that the scope is this pnf-action.yaml. So for VNF, I was thinking that for VNF it will be vnf-config-assign.yaml, and for VF it will be vf-config-assign.yaml. So we can keep adding those files, and as we give the action and scope, it will extract the parameters and prepare the JSON. Sorry,
So,
yeah.
Rahul,
Yuri, go ahead.
yeah, because we came up with like a more generic way of generating the payload based on scope and action that does not require you to have these different type of files itself. So, Pradmesh, maybe do you want to provide feedback to Rahul, or do you want to first go through your design? I think it'll be better if you go through your design so he understands what we're trying to achieve and how, and then we can kind of sync up of how do we tackle this together.
Yes. I'll share my screen.
Okay, good.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can see IntelliJ.
IntelliJ, right? That's what I want. So this is how, let me make it. Never mind. Okay, so this is where right now I'm not sure the which VPMN to use because we have like various VPMNs. So let's say I'm doing CDS processing. So this is the first method it will call, which is build payload based on scope and action, and basically it's going to call this generate payload CDS. Basically, this is the class which going to create the JSON object based on VNF, PNF, or whatever scope and action is. So this is I'm checking scope, which is going to be VNF, VF module. Right now I'm just focusing on VNF. It can be other scopes also, and it will go and build this payload. And this is basically the interface. So basically for config VNF and config VF module, there's going to be a class which is going to implement this interface. Right now, there's one thing is missing. So in order to send the config deploy, we don't supply instance parameters, but for config assign, we do supply. I haven't differentiated those, so that part is missing. And this is how the payload is going to look like. This is for config VF module. The only difference between those, because the VF model requires resolution key, which VNF doesn't require. That's the only difference. And this build config property is based on, if I go here, so this basically is going to build all those properties required in order to send the payload to CDS. So there can be instance parameters, and it cannot be instance parameters. And this is going to build the payload, and the payload will look like, I don't have example. I don't have example at this moment.
The payload would look like what we had for PNF. So
yes.
Yeah.
But similarly, if you want to add a PNF, you just have to PNF implements virtual component, and whatever stuff you want to add specific to PNF, you will add it over there. That's it.
Right. So a lot of the I can say, what we're trying to do is use scope to tell SO that it needs to provide a certain set of attributes. So, for example, if your scope is a service, then the main thing that we need is service instance ID and service model UUID. If it's DNF, then you provide service instance information, plus you provide VNF ID information. If it's VF module, you provide service, VNF, and VF module. If you have PNF, for example, then you want to provide service and PNF, right? So the scope will drive those key attributes that needs to be passed to CDS. What we are also are supposed to be doing is we're passing all the instance params, like, whatever provided by the vid user or the external client at VNF level or VF module level or service level to the calling function as well, CDS.
Mhm.
So this way we generate our payload based on the scope, and the action is also we're using to generate what the action will be. And for VF modules, there's one additional thing we need to pass, but you don't care for that thing in the PNF use case. PNF is only, it's like a VNF use case and only acts upon the action itself.
Yeah. Now the question is, are we following which approach? Because what Rahul did is using YAML to create payloads, and what I'm doing is basically using a JSON object, basically setting those parameters into a JSON object and passing it in the payload. Like I can see over here, build config properties. This is basically the JSON object I'm getting. If I do this, this is what exactly I'm getting, the JSON object. That's the only difference.
And one other thing is that action can be anything we want, right?
Yes. So yes,
it's not hard coded to config assign or config deploy.
Yes, it's not hard coded.
The action is something that we can pass to CDS based on what what we put as the action for that specific execution building block. Rahul. So
Question.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so can we enlarge this config vnf.java? Because this is in split screen currently. Yeah, thank you. So in build property object for VNF, this is the method. Currently, yeah. So can you go back to the config vnf dot Java? Yeah. So build property object for VNF. So in this method, what we are doing is we are collecting all the properties which JSON will need, right?
Yes.
So these properties, can you scroll it down a bit? So you are getting some fixed properties like service instance ID, service model UID, and these are the fixed properties. You are assuming that these are static properties, and then you are also
These are keys. They're static. That's absolutely right.
Yes.
And then some variable properties you are getting using the instance param for VNF, right?
That's
and
correct.
you will be extracting action from the building block execution.
No, yeah, kind of, yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I see that if you use YAML, then in case if there are some static properties change in future, then you don't need to change in the code.
Yes, exactly. That's one benefit I was thinking on weekend, that if you have like a YAML, then it's easy to add in the file itself. Don't have to add in the source code.
But you still need to change the code.
Right.
You still need a new build. So you don't. There's a lot of complexity for something that will rarely change. So I mean, I understand the value if we wanted to do this, if it would be something that would change a lot, but I don't foresee this changing a lot because service instance ID, VNF ID are very generic type of information that will always exist. Maybe you're going to have more, but I think for CDS, the main point is that CDS just requires those ID, and then the package will be responsible to retrieve all the missing information that are not provided by ESO. So
right. So Rahul, like you had some IPv4 data, which you retrieve from ANI. So instead of SO doing that, we have code added to CDS to do all of that. So the only thing you need to CDS is the keys, like service instance and PNF ID, so that CDS can do all the necessary resolution required itself and keep the SO code very generic across all PNF actions, not just for config assign.
Let's assume what I am getting here is that we are assuming that on the basis of action, CDS will pick will resolve all the parameters using A and I or some other resource, right?
That's
Based
right.
on the scope and
Yeah.
the action. Yes, you're right. Yes, you're correct.
But it might be possible that, like in our case, what we are we are thinking is that we will send the software version from SO. So it means that we the
It will
CDS
be
will.
the
But let me ask
it will
this
be the
question: Is
instance
it
param.
Yeah,
right?
please.
Is it from SO or is it from the users passing the software version, right? Meaning that it's coming from external system as an instance parent.
Yes, I think vid will be sending it,
Right.
and
So
then SO. Yeah, please.
anything the user pass, right? So MSO for any of the actions should be passed as instance properties into CDS, right? So you're passing the keys and you're passing the instance properties, and that's what Pratmesh has implemented as well. So this way, it doesn't matter if it's today's software version, tomorrow it could be something else. You don't need to make any code changes, right? You're building something generic that you can pass any key value pair, and CDS will pick it up and do whatever necessary with that, with the SO path.
The only thing that need to change is the different parameter that the user input in vid and the CBA package to handle it.
Right.
So that reads the property. In between, we don't want to change anything.
It's Henry here. Yeah. Do you mind I just feel
Henry, you are not audible.
Can you come closer to your mic?
Rahul, can you mute for a moment?
Yuri?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's like I thought like something happened on me.
No. I think Henry wants to present something. Henry?
Okay.
Henry, we cannot hear you if you're speaking.
Henry, you are still not audible.
Can you hear me?
Not really. You sound like you're 10,000 miles away.
Hello. Hi guys.
Go ahead.
It's Henry. Yeah, I'm using Rahul's microphone. So just my thought about this part. So it's a more like design decision. So what we want to achieve is we want the way we can construct the payload which will be sending from SO to CDS. So in my opinion, there are a few things we can consider. So the first one is, would there be a lot of like different variety of the payload? So at the moment we have like config VF, config VNF. So we might need to have someone for config PNF. So at the moment we only have like maybe 2 or 3 different varieties of the payload. So another question is, will there be a lot of different payload in the future? For this one, CDS is supposed to be a self-service API. So the payload might vary in the future if we have different blueprints to support different actions or to support different kind of like scope or something in the future. So do you want to using a template driven way of working, or we are fine with the Java code? So what Rahul tried to achieve here is he's using a template-driven way of working. He just like using all those like YAML template. So basically, all you need to do is using different template. You can construct different payload based on your input, based on your scope or action, different requirement. So would that be something of interest to our generic CDS, SO2 CDS core? Would that be something interested? If there's something interested, can we like see whether these two can be merged together?
Okay, so the question on templating, I think, Pragmesh, were you using JSON template?
I was just basic JSON object. That's it. I'm putting into the payload. That's it.
So at the moment, it's using like a string value, which will be a JSON object.
Yes, technically, yes.
Yeah. So I just wonder, can we like using the YAML way of working for that part? So just like what Rahul just present. So we have like a YAML template files.
Yes, the point of conversation is like I've started working on this stuff in probably a month, right? And we should have one generic way of implementation if we are supporting different scopes and whatever it is. So we are trying to figure out what's the better way to do it, and what's the easier way. So I mean, what I'm trying to say, what's the easier way that, let's say, for a new person comes, for that person it's easy to extend that solution.
Yeah, so that's why it's more like design decision. Yeah.
Yes,
and that's why my suggestion is, should we try to using some like kind of like a template-driven way of working? So YAML template or JSON template or Velocity template, all those are a good example of template. So can we using those for our generic SO2 CDS core?
But it would be useful if we're applying this to change. But the only thing that is passed between SO and CDS as our type, if you will, is business object that will never change. It's the service. It's the concept of service, VNF and VF module. Those has a very powerful meaning in ONAP and in what we're trying to instantiate, and along with PNF. And everything that is generic, that is related to a specific instance of the VNF that you want to instantiate, they are passed as instance param, which is already generic. And then it's going to be passed to CDS. So did we want to add the templating and the YAML stuff? And I think it will complexify the implementation, which is already complex, for no short-term value.
Yeah, so
maybe there will be a value. I personally don't see a value even in long term. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my understanding of what we're trying to do here.
Sebastian, so that's why I said in the beginning. So it's more like design decisions. So there are a few things we can consider. Is do we need to like consider for all the other like different actions and different scope in the future? I mean, as you say, like maybe not in the near future. Maybe in a long term there might be something possible. So it's more like about CDS. CDS are provide the self-service API. My understanding is all those like different actions are defined in your blueprints archive. So
but I guess the key is we are defining a contract for all actions executed by CDS and SO will have a specific interface, right? And that contract is passing the keys and passing the action and then passing whatever instance params are. That's our contract.
Yeah, that's
what
true.
I'm trying to say is that that contract will always be valid for any VNF or PNF or VF module or service action itself. It should not be violated. It shouldn't be different. It should always be consistent across all VNF actions, all PNF actions itself, Henry.
So if our payload is kind of like limited to maybe 3 or 4 different like scenarios, so I think we can just using Java code. We don't need to using too many of the velocity like a template-driven way of working. But if our contract, if our interface might change during like between different scopes or just between different like actions, then we should try to consider the template-driven way of working. So I mean, that's my thought about this one. I didn't say like which one is the way to work to go.
Right. What I'm trying to say is that it will not change. What we're defining is a contract that will be consistent. It will not change across different actions. Okay, so I'm just making this point to help you guys drive your design decision making.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, that part sounds doable. Yeah. So
Okay.
now the question is like, so for our use case, we are mainly focused on the PNF. What needs to be done to get the PNF supported in the generic CDS call?
Pradmesh, maybe can you show that what you did for VNF and how we can extend it to PNF as well? I think it will be a separate class, right? That you have to, because PNF has to get PNF model information. The PNF blueprint name and version is stored in different place, but the PNF ID will be also stored in different place. So I just want to make sure that it's treated separately than BNF.
Okay, yeah. No more question from my side. I hand over to Rahul. Yeah, thank you.
What happened? He left. Do I need to show something or?
Yeah, can you show how we can extend this to PNF as well?
So for PNF, I think so you just have to add whatever the scope is, here in this case PF module, and you just need to create a class, let's say something like this. Hold on. And that's it, and you just have to supply the request payload, whatever, like the same way I'm doing it here. Read service instance or PNF related stuff. Over here, you will need to create your payload. That's it, nothing much, no fanciness. And here probably you need to add, because I don't know how for PNF payload might differ. I don't think so it's going to differ, but something similar, you have to do it over here. Something like that.
Yeah, Prathamesh, this one is towards the CDS part, but SO as of now won't support a generic, I mean, SO as of now doesn't have PNF building blocks, right? So how it will help this particular part, how it will help for
there is no like a PNF POJO, like the way we have like a generic VNF POJO, something like that. Like for this, do we have like something, a PNF specific stuff?
No, okay. My question was, we don't have a building blocks concept for PNF as of now.
Yeah, that's correct. But I think Rahul, you guys did something, right, to call the abstract mechanism for PNF config assign, config deploy, right? You're gonna just extend that to use the generic mechanism.
Yes. How we are reading it right now, like the same way, the same way I have to do the same exact thing. Like the way right now you are setting the PNF object information, the PNF fields which you are sending those information to the CDS. That part I just have to do it over here. But how you're getting that information is same as the way you have done in dispatch. I don't know, in dispatch or somewhere else. Are you following what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, so my only concern here is that how we are going to get the variable parameters. So in your case in VNF, you are extracting. Can you just please go to the config vnf.java? So in that class, you are just extracting the instance param for VNF. So can you click here, populate instance params? Can you go inside this implementation of this class?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here what you are doing is you are extracting the service, and then on from that service you are yeah. So here we are saying that we are completely dependent on service. So just sending you a request, just Give me a second. I'm just going to share you a request on the chat. I just shared a request on the chat. So can you just open it on your screen? This chat is
This one?
The chat where we are on the webex.com where we are talking
I'm
together,
here only.
chat and all.
It's there, but it's not complete though. I'm.
You don't have any service information, and I'm not sure if this is even a valid SO request. Because I think one thing we have to understand is what Pratmesh did to populate the instance param is closely related to the way SO parse the payload that is sent to it, right? It creates a bunch of dependency of object, and then it do a JSON loads of this and create object and so on and so forth. And what he's doing is basically traversing to this list of objects to get the information we need so that we can pass it to CDS. Yeah. So now everything will be dependent on the way the implementation of SO is done for PNF, which we don't know, at least I think for Prat and I, we don't know exactly how it is. So it will be dependent on the way SO handles that. And then we just need to go fetch the information we need for that format, PNF format. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a little to me. So we are saying that these instance parameters, which will be directly connected to the action, that for this action, these will be the instance parameters. So where is that mapping? Is that mapping is?
It's in the payload. I can show you. I don't have example payload. For. Yeah, I can show you.
If
I hope I have it. I don't have it for PNF though, but
yeah, but for VNF that will work for me.
Let me see if there are too many windows. So. Yeah, this is the one. So there, can you? Okay, hold on. So this is the SO payload, and if you see, this is instance parameters. Not here. Sorry, over here. That is for service level. We don't have any. For VNF, you will see instance parameters over here. For now, I just put the random value, but you can put anything. So this is the instance parameter. So basically, I'm reading those in the code. It reads that. And this is for module. That's it.
And as you can see here in the SO payload, it's the JSON format, and a service is a list of VNF, which each VNF is a list of VF module. And each of those objects has an instance param list, which is information that comes from the vid. The user enters and provides, which is generic. All the rest, everything, most of the rest is already defined as a contract for SO that you need to have this information, otherwise SO will reject it. And this is where we get most of the information, except for the instance param.
Can I share my screen for a few?
Yes, let me.
Moments?
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
So here we are. These are the parameters that vary in terms of PNF in configuration case. So we have a PNF ID here, which is mapped to correlation ID, and this is the ID that we send. But in your case, you have instance params, we have user params.
Is this a real
So
payload to instantiate a PNF? Because I'm kind of skeptical on this because it seems like the information is generic and not driven by SO. So that means that there's no model being defined.
This is probably a real payload for PNFs because PNFs don't use the macro building blocks. They use a custom BPM.
But even with custom BPM, you still, even for VNF, you still had to provide, the model UUID from SDC and all, so that it knows, that SO knows which VSP to get from SDC, right?
Well, they have the model here as well, right?
as you
For the
can see
service.
the model info.
But they don't do like model information for PNF. So I can say the current PNF implementation is not as robust as the VNF.
Okay. So I think maybe my point is maybe it's going to change so that it becomes more robust as VNF, and maybe the current implementation, it may not be something we want to design around for PNF.
Well,
so
yeah, that's 100% correct, because we know we want to convert the PNF custom BPMN into PNF building blocks, right? Nokia was supposed to do it for Frankfurt, but they didn't do it, right? So somebody's gonna do it, probably for the peer release. It might be you, Sebastian. But the main point here is that how we generate the PNF, the CDS set of actions, it should be using a single mechanism. We should not have different implementation of how to generate the CDS payload and and interact with CDS, right? It should be a single implementation from that aspect. How we get the data, where we get the data to generate that payload, I don't really care. But the main thing is that we should have a class to handle the PNF use case that handles it for this specific PNF use case, right? From a custom BPMN perspective.
Yeah. Okay. So now I understand why you were kind of skeptical on the way we're doing it, because we're doing it in a VNF way, and it was much more laid down and defined than using that approach. Now I understand the issue.
Yeah, because the VNF implementation, the legacy implementation allows that code that you are writing, but for us, if there is no actual mapping between action and parameters, then it will be very difficult for us to dynamically collect the parameters from the service request.
Because you don't
so if
have
there
that
is
defined
yes
payload. It's
so
kind of generic.
So if we write a class for us like config pnf.java, and in that we have a YAML which maps with the action to the request, then it will be easy for us. So does your code allow us to write our implementation so that we can have some mapping inside that? And
I think you could use, because if we come back to the Pratt's code where he was generating the payload, this is a different class, right? So the implementation could be whatever you want.
Yes.
Right, Pratt? So
I think so. You just probably the way you're doing this, the YAML stuff, right? So forget about YAML, and if you go simple like a JSON object, I think so. The part is same, right?
Yeah.
YAML is just doing the actually it is representing the request, and then the main file is mapper.yaml, which is mapping the request, which is going request key, which is going towards CDS to the keys. Those are coming from WID. So actually we need
is there a single implementation of there should be a single implementation for mapper. There shouldn't be multiple implementation for mappers for different actions. That's the main thing, Rahul. So I don't think we need I think you can just have a single implementation that generates this payload for PNF action. Okay, because what do you need for CDS? You need the keys, PNF ID, service instance ID, and then you need whatever user param payload that is passed under the action config properties. And that's it. That's your contract. It will not change for any other action for PNF.
Just a question. Who is going to do the PNF implementation?
Henry, I think you had a question. Rahul? I cannot hear you guys.
Yeah. So who is going to implement the PNF implementation?
Right now, Ericsson is doing it, right?
Yeah. So above your code, we will be doing it.
Can you say that one more time?
So about the Pratmesh code, we will be doing it. That's
Pratmesh handles the VNF use cases. All you need to do is extend the PNF use cases in the Pratmesh code so that we have a single design implementation.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Rahul, or what we're trying to say?
Yeah. So Pratmesh will submit his code, and then above it, you will be writing.
It's already there. Just I think so. Just create dependency on it, and then you are good to go. I have work in progress patch. I think so. You reviewed it. That's the patch.
Yeah. So I have not completely reviewed it, so I'll review it again line by line, and then
please review it. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, if I have something, please let me know.
What I will do is I will write the PNF code above it, and then you can review.
Very good.
Sounds good.
So I'll create a dependency on your commit.
Yes.
But
and also, do you use Rocket Chat? You can ask questions. We can discuss over, because it's possible that I'm missing something in the implementation and it's really needed. Like we can talk and we can have that, right? Because it's possible that I might be missing something and you can point that out. So you can reach out to me through Rocket Chat.
Yeah, sure. I'll do that.
Thank you.
And one last question. So, does your code allows to, because currently from where this action and scope is coming? So can you?
Scope is coming from, there is another patch which is dependent on. I'll send you. I don't have right now the link, but what I'm trying to do now, I did something because we have I think so 4 or more people are working on this stuff, right? So what I've done, I recorded all the patches right now and I create a table. I'm going to add that on the Jira, so you will know what exactly this patch does. Getting the scope and action, that stuff is, I think so, handled by Manmohan, and so those 2 patches, I think so, doing something similar. But I will add the list of patches are there on the Jira ticket. You have the Jira ticket, right? SO2312. That's the Jira ticket.
Yeah. So just sharing my understanding on that. So there is a patch which adds two column in the table called orchestration flow reference table. The columns are scope and action, and on the basis of that you decide. So if we don't want to use that table because PNF currently don't use that table, so can those action scope come from BPMN or somewhere else?
Like you just have to add the scope as PNF instead of VNF. That's it.
And action.
I don't
no, Prathamesh, actually, what Rahul is telling is like PNF doesn't use that table at all.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
yeah, the orchestration flow reference is only for the building block, and there's no building block for PNF.
Oh, okay. So I don't know.
But how? So everything, I think all of the code that Prat is doing is related to the building block. It has no relation outside of this. So maybe we're looking at a completely different implementation for PNFs.
I think so. Yes. Yeah.
So I just want to know what is the triggering point of this. So this table is the triggering point for your building block.
I have a so Manmohan, Sunil did added a
yes.
I think so he gave a design session. So we have this Microsoft Word copy where he mentioned how the flow works, but that's for VNF and VF. Maybe something is similar might be possible for PNF. Am I right?
Yeah, Prathamesh, actually, so the design document is only for building blocks, which again goes with VNF and VFs, not with PNFs.
So for Rahul, for PNF, do we have any something similar table that says what are the different actions that are activities that are executed for each of the PNF custom flows?
No. So I don't think that there is any table that we pick from which we pick the action, because we always PNF only dependent on the custom workflows.
Okay,
And
so everything that you're building is considered a custom workflow?
yes. So
And Rahul, might be that building. Okay, sorry, the BPMN name might be there in service recipe table. Is that correct?
yeah, that is the custom workflow. So in service recipe table we store that this service will have is having this workflow, and against the action, that action is different from the
Can you
action that
show us?
Prathamesh is having.
Yeah, so yeah. That is SO action actually. Yeah, right.
Yes. So
And internally, in a single BPMN, you internally call a subprocess, and you means like in a single BPMN call will do all the stuff, right? Instead of
yeah, that
okay.
single that custom BPM and workflow has building blocks inside it.
Okay, the building block mean to say subprocesses. That's it.
Yes, sub process.
Okay,
So
okay, okay.
if we trigger our for Prathamesh, the triggering point is generic CDS processing, right? This is the class from where that trigger will happen.
Yes. Yes.
So if we have and the action is picked up from building block execution. So if we store the action and scope from the input of the building block, then we can use your flow, right?
Yes. I think so. Yes.
Because because in the slide that Bell Canada shared few days back, they are saying that if the action is not found in the table, then they will use the legacy way, something like that, as I remember.
Yeah, so it is basically for again building block. Legacy way was to call AppC specific building blocks, which we have like generic VNF health check and configuration scale out BB. But what we have right now is a single BPMN, which Prathamesh is writing, controller execution building block. So legacy mean over there to call AppC.
So one question, Pratmesh, if they pass that as input, the metadata information about the scope and action, can we execute the current flow for PNFs to generate the PNF payload and
Yeah, I think so. It just the method would accept two extra parameters, string scope, string action. That's it. But I don't know who is going to supply that. I need to investigate that. Because right now we are setting the scope and action in this what is that building block object.
yes?
But I don't understand like how different is going to be. Are we not using that object or something else? So I don't know about. I'm not sure about that. It doesn't make any difference if you add as a parameter unless you're reading it from some other object.
Just showing it on my screen. Can you show it? Can you see it? I am sharing a BPMN which takes input as action as config assign, and then
Yes, but why you are hard coding that?
yeah, because we
No,
do
because
not
he has
have
a
any table,
custom.
right?
It's a custom BPMN, right? So think of it.
Oh,
Each custom BPMN has its own scope and action. That's the way I see it.
okay. Then okay. So you are saying you will use that generic CDS. Let's say my BPM, and you will use it over there, and you want extra parameters like additional parameters, scope and action over there. You will pass hard coded values. That's it.
Yes, something
Yeah,
like it.
so
Yeah, that's
so
possible.
instead of table, those value can come from anywhere, the
Yes.
except the table.
And for VNF and VF, we will use the building block execute that whatever that object is, and I will supply values over there.
Right, because
Yeah,
it also gives us a path towards going into supporting building block implementation later on, right? Because you don't
Yeah,
need to change this implementation because then later on, instead of hard coding things, everything will come from the tables itself.
yeah. And I have a question related to this. Which is the which is we are using only one BPMN, right? Which is the right BPMN? Because I'm looking into the different patches, and I think so. Pooja is using different one. Henry is using a bit different one. Rahul is using a different one. I'm a bit confused. Do we have an example where this is the one BPMN and this is gonna call different stuff? Like I can show you this is the one I found. I'm not sure this is the right one, but please correct me if I'm wrong because I'm kind of getting lost in. Hold on, I'm sharing my screen.
sure.
I think if I'm remembering, we were.
Yeah, that's exactly. But as for the patches, this is the one. Yes. Henry is using this one, and this is also called a Gen Controller Execution Building Block. So I'm not sure, are we using this one or are we using this one, which is the correct one? And what Rahul is showing is a bit different now.
I think
Actually,
Henry's BPMN is more like the end game of what we would like to do with the integration with AppC, where Pooja's one is maybe more hybrid, so that we support the generic building flow of CDS, but we still call the original AppC building block that exists in SO right now.
But then why do we have 3 different BPMN with the same name?
This, I don't know.
Because it's, yeah. Should we, like, can I do one thing? Can I push a patch which will have only BPMN and everyone will review it? That's like a standard BPMN and everyone will keep on adding that stuff. Like, because just kind of trying to understand which is the right one we should do.
Yeah, Pratimesh. So actually, what Pooja has done is like she has downloaded, means like she has copied your BPM and all the XML file, and we have added the extra logic which we need to support for the legacy system. So that's the point we handled.
This is the one which is the final one, right? Going to be.
I hope so. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, and please keep this screen on. I had a one doubt over here. So yeah, Pratimesh, I think you might help me out with this. Yeah. So actually, what is happening is whenever a call comes from SO to this particular BPMN, the call is like the parameter which is getting sent is building block execution object.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So now, okay, I need to call the legacy system. If you see like a BB to execute that sub process which we are gonna call from this BPMN. So I am passing a particular name. Means like the building block name, like generic VNF health check BB, the old one. So if I pass that name, to pass the building block object, the whole object I need to pass to support the old flow. Right. So how will I? Yeah. So how will I be able to pass that generic building block, whole building block? Because the execution object which is getting played over here is a generic building block. I need to pass same block to a sub process. Do you know how we can?
Can't you do that execution dot set variable? Can't you do that?
Execution set variable. See, but actually, yeah, I understand. I tried that. So the building block object. Yeah, Prathamesh, yeah, I understand. I got your point. But what actually what building if we open the building block execution object and see it won't accept a string and an object as parameters.
This one, right?
Yeah. If you can see here, it won't allow you to push an object as a value. Set
if you
variable.
add it, set variable.
Yes.
Oh yeah. So what exactly you need to pass this as a, what exactly you need to pass? Need to store?
Whole
I mean,
building block execution object I want to pass actually.
yeah, I don't know. I need to think.
Yeah. Could you just means like check from your end? I'm also checking, but yeah, I thought okay, fresh eyes will be a good point.
Yes, that's for sure. I need to check. I need to check. So you need to pass the whole building block execution, right? Like the.
Yeah, because at present I don't want to change the generic VNF health check. The old code should be there. If you open a generic VNF health check, generic VNF health check Java. Yeah. So
That's the one.
correct. So it accepts the building block execution as an object. So I don't want to change this. I want to pass the same object so that the old flow just flows.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I need to think. I can't give you answers. Like,
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
just like that. I'll spend some time.
yeah, sure. Take your time.
I'm not so expert in BPM and stuff, but I'll think if it's possible through the BPM and can we do something like that, or do we have to do something in the code?
Okay.
I'll think about it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah. That's one question I had. Yeah, that's.
So Rahul, Henry, Sebastian, Sunil, Pratmesh, are we in sync of what we're trying to do? Should we sync up later this week?
Yeah, we can sync up later this week. It's Henry here. So do we have a conclusion which workflow will be used? So we are sending the code review for both my solution and Poya solution to SO. So there's no conclusion at this stage.
Henry, I want to say that you don't need to do your solution at this time. You can do it for G release. Let's just focus on getting Sunil's solution working and Pradmesh's and whatever Rahul is working on for PN.
Yeah, for my solution, it's not working. Only working for the actor selection. It's also working for my decision point.
Decision point we want, but we don't want to move towards Java for all the implementation of AppC.
Yeah, so here's the questions. How many different AppC we want to support? As I can see today, is scale out and the healthy check. I didn't see any others.
We will support what Sunil is working on. We'll support all the AppC actions using the classic workflows.
Yeah, but if you check the orchestration flow tables, there are not so many need to interact with the controller. Most of those are like, say, for the network functions.
So there's scale out use case that could be config modify. There's a bunch of AppC LCM action currently supported. So I would say all the VNF LCM through AppC should support using Sunil's flow.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if that's a decision from your side, I'm okay with it. So I still like I will change my scope. I say my solution for decision point for the AppC and the CDS PNF use case. I will ignore all the other AppC VNF use case.
Right, because you're not trying to implement AppC implementation for PNFs as well, right?
I might need to do that part for Huawei.
For Huawei?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for PNF, we have an upgrade which need to be applicable for both AppC and not AppC, SDNC and the CDS. So my code is a decision point which will be generic. It can be used for both of those scenarios.
Okay. Maybe, Henry, can you just put a table of what is needed for PNF use cases? Who are the actors so that I can just take a look at it one time and we can make a clear decision of what is required?
We have a meeting on Thursday. It's about the PNF upgrade use case. So all the parties will be there. I can send you the.
Forward to me.
I can forward to you. Yeah, it's in the ONAP like a meeting page.
Yeah, but there's so many. Can you?
Okay. Yeah, I forward to you. If you want, you can dial in, and then we can make decision. And another part, Yuri just